Okay. I want to do the review for everyone so that we can see where we are, because with summer school, things move so quickly that I just want to make sure that no one is falling through or falling behind, because we have to do, the regular 16 weeks of work in 6 weeks. So you are doing 3 times the work every single week almost. So for week 2, week 1, you really only had to turn in your Canvas thing and go through the Canvas prompts and all that kind of stuff. But week 2, this is where you find it on modules. And you say, it says week 2, this is what we're doing, historical context, early playwrights, finding the narrative. And then about this week, week 2, overview and to-do list. So here, we are looking at theater spaces. So you're looking at 2 prosceniums, first a drawing and then a proscenium arch. This is a little summary of Oedipus the King, which I hope you guys looked at because it will help you understand the play. We reviewed the theater spaces. You read chapter 2 and 3 in your textbook. You look at review chapter 4, playwrights and dramatic conventions. We're going over those today. And you read that, read Oedipus the King, and then take yourself on a local COVID-19 safe field trip into your theater spaces. And that was really a fun discussion to read. I thought that was so incredible. And then you answer the questions about Oedipus. This is an important assignment worth 50 points. Do your quizzes 1 and 2. So this part, Oedipus, and doing the 50-point quiz, I thought it'd be worth it to just take a quick look at that and see if we have any questions on it. And if I go to next, where does it take me? Okay, that we don't care about. But it might be worth it if you want to review that. The quizzes, blah, blah. Finding a theatrical space. Everybody did a great job with that. I loved seeing all the images and it was so exciting. Did you guys look at those? I saw you post. It's so much fun and really beautiful. And this is the first one is Williams. He was right on the money on Sunday, so that was terrific. And then to see these other beautiful posts was incredible. And how you looked at the theater space and whether the playing space is here and the audience is here and how they could be, I thought was really remarkable. This was a beautiful one put in by Ari, where you could have the playing space here and the audience could sit all the way around the edge, which was also a terrific concept. And then this, a natural, an outdoor amphitheater, not natural, they obviously put this in, but where you could have playing space, or you could have these 2 as playing space and the audience be on these 2 tiers, which would be probably seat about 100. Some of them you had to download to look at, and they were fantastic. And this is Antoni, who's in France. So he looked at these 3 platforms across from his apartment first, and that you could see things, but you would be able to hear them with headphones. I thought that was a very, very cool idea. Or this space in the open square, and you could have a balcony above. And then this space, which he described, I actually originally thought this was a subway, but it's not. And so it could be a very great, I love these industrial spaces, really inventive thinking about what is a theater space. And this, which is, of course, Luxembourg Gardens, and it is very much a sort of traditional space in that you could have a beautiful playing space here, lots of entrances through the sides, and the audience seated all the way around. And this, if we were to describe this particular arrangement with the audience all the way around and possibly a scenic element or area here, we'd be describing a thrust stage that we talked about last time. And one that was fantastic, I thought, to bring in our own little Santa Barbara. This is very interesting because this is the chromatic gate. And I completely never understood this particular thing for the longest time until I actually saw it at sunset. And it is truly showing you all of the colors of sunset if you go from bright to midnight blue. But her image here is that the chromatic gate would draw the eye of the audience, that the performance could be the edge of the stage. And she said a concern about the daytime noise, but honestly, if you're engaged in a performance, a lot of performances happen and they could just be in this circular sidewalk all the way around and standing, which is typical for our Shakespeare time. So I thought that these were really super fun. This is a secret hideaway beach, which was incredible. And several people said, yes, I want to go there. But you could perform here, you could perform here, up on the cliff, and have the audience be in the alcove of the cliff. Really some exciting places. And a very beautiful site in Oakland. And you could see where you would have entrances into this building, which could be a tiring house, and he's going to look at it from the other side for us. So you could have the playing space be on this side. I've actually worked in a space where the audience would be here and the actors were in boats in the audience. So that might be something to think about. We can be completely unconventional with how we look at things. So it's really a wonderful thing to look at. And here we'll look at this one. As if you didn't look at this, this is incredible. And let me see if I can actually show it to you, because I opened it yesterday. And then you tell me if you are seeing this incredible view. I'm gonna have to, I think, are you still seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. We're gonna look at this other thing because I want you to see this. And this is the one that you put up. How about that? Incredible. And you could really have the audience sitting here and the playing space be here. So this would be where the audience is on a raked, as we would say, a raked house. The audience is going up away from the stage space, and you could simply define this just by the way the actors move. So that is really beautiful and just completely dramatic, using natural light, and then you have light creeping in. You could also use this as the sun sets, and this wall of stone would cast shadow. So very, very exciting and inventive use of space. And I really appreciate everyone taking time to look at those kinds of things. Very, very fun. I'm going to now go to back to the Canvas site, but I want you to look at what our to-do is for. So here we go. I'm waiting for the site. Oh, yeah, okay. So you take a look if you haven't looked at the if you have not looked at the discussion, then you'll want to see some of the other very fun things that we're going to, people that have put in for playing spaces. All right, let's go to today's topic. We have a lot of fun things that we can look at here. I'm going to, here we go. And screen share. So this is what you'll see on your Canvas site for this particular module. We're going to look at Playwrights presentation. I'm going to click this button and you'll see a PowerPoint presentation. And as we go along, we will see a variety of trailers and videos that go along with each of these different contemporary playwrights that we're looking at. So let's have our discussion on Playwrights. And you can look at this. Oh, I don't want to see that internet connection's unstable. Playwriting. First of all, note that the way that it's spelled is R-I-G-H-T. WRIGHT. And that's as in a shipwright, a woodworker, a person that's actually a craftsman, taking detail on how to look at things, as opposed to WRITE. Here are some really prominent African-American playwrights right now. This is Lynn Nottage. This guy has two names. They were just in the Sunday Times last week. I'm going to make myself a note to post that because that was an incredible article on new playwrights. And I'll bring that in and I'll post it right on this page. So the creative process of playwriting, a playwright starts with an image or an idea and works an action around it, or can start with an unusual character and develops action around a character. Playwrights have different techniques to spur their creativity. We are going to actually work on this process. We will be looking for a headline, and that's an assignment we'll go over at the very end of class, which is try and find a headline that speaks to you in the way that Lin-Manuel Miranda wanted to talk about his own story, his own life. And you'll find one in a news story. Look around the news, go to whatever your favorite news feed is, see if you can find something, capture the article, and then you'll post it. From that, you're going to want to present an action or a theme around this particular idea. So as we're going around the process of playwriting, be thinking about, how would I do that? How would I be able to locate an idea that could be so exciting as In the Heights? Think about the playwright as an architect. So where an architect does a group of drawings and has an idea on paper, and then the contractor executes the idea and builds the house, that's the playwright's job in the theater. The playwright is creating the framework for the play to take place, and then the execution of the framework takes a lot of other people and takes people to flesh out the idea of the playwright, and also to nudge the playwright. Is this what you really meant? Is this what you're telling us? How does this look to you? So some of the playwright's tools that they build the play with are plot, character, and language. So what is the plot? What is a plot? A plot is different than a theme, and the theme may not be apparent until the playwright actually is done. You know, it may only just be an idea, but a plot, what I always say is who does what to whom. So it tells us of the characters going from place to place to place. This happens, and this happens. It's very mechanical. It's just a mechanical part of the play. The characters are where the play lives. The play lives inside of the characters. The characters are the idea. They're the thing that thrusts the play forward. And then the language. How do the characters talk about their world? How do they talk about others? How do they talk about themselves? What do they think about when they're talking about themselves? And sometimes when we get into acting, we'll talk about what those two things are when they're saying a soliloquy and they're giving you the idea of what's in their head, but they're saying it out loud. And we'll have that idea of when they're actually doing an aside, which is they're letting the audience in on a secret, but it's not necessarily an idea that's in their head. So this is a really important thing, because the plot is not the theme or the overarching idea of the play. So I want you to be able to separate those two things about the playwright. So the playwright begins when the whole event with the conflict is conceived. So they think about it, what's going to happen, and the conflict, or the rub that's in between, the tension that's divided, and the events must be compelling. So when you're thinking about your story that you want to bring in, think about something that really is compelling. It can be funny, it can be tragic, it can be a lot of different kinds of things, and we'll talk about different genre today also. But when you're working with it, you're working as a playwright, and you guys won't be writing actual dialogue, but performability is the key to the success of story. So the play only unfolds as the action, as the characters speak to each other. So how they talk to each other, can it be performed? How are they moving within that language? What does the language compel them to do? And that must be performable. That is the difference between a novel, which somebody's reading or narrating something to you, and a play. It must be performable. So actors can stand up there, one or more, and tell you the story. And the audience is engaged by watching and listening to the actor. It requires compression, economy, and intensity. So compression is you want to get to the meat of the story or the conflict, the point of attack, as soon as possible. You want to cut to the chase, start right at the beginning of the play. And this is different than a movie. When you're watching a movie, you can have this beautiful scenery that helps set the tone. You can see where you are, and perhaps the camera takes you down a journey so that by the time you actually start seeing the actor, you have a great idea of where they're located. You have an idea of what their economic circumstances are. You have an idea of where they live, what season it is, because the camera's telling you the story. When you're working with a play, the actors have to tell you all that. The audience doesn't get to see anything except the actors tell you that. In the case of a musical, when you have an overture, you will have a musical introduction, but nonetheless, the actors are the first thing that tell you what the story is going to take place. So that's why this idea of compression. Get into the story as fast as you can. And economy. So you're not going to use a lot of extraneous words. It's not going to be rambling. Every word is carefully selected for a specific intent. There's a purpose behind each word. And then it's done with intensity so that there's an energy that is exchanged not only actor to actor, but actor to audience. The characters must be believable, multifaceted, and psychologically complex. We really don't want to have a boring, uninteresting character up there. We're constantly trying to figure out, why is that character doing that? Why would they be doing that? Or maybe inside you're saying, no, don't do that. And then you realize that what they're doing is actually something that is because of their psychological need to do it, although on the outside it doesn't appear that way at all. So the dilemma that they have and the responses are credible and far more complex and intriguing than we think, or than perhaps we see people in our everyday life. What is the playwright's role in the theater? So they have a very interesting place because it happens long before the play takes place, unless you're doing a completely improvisational or devised piece, and we could talk about that. But an improvisational and devised piece is usually collective, working together. So they wouldn't have someone who is specifically a playwright. And we can talk about those forms later, but that's not the kind of thing that we're talking about. It's not attributed to a playwright. The playwright is central to the theater production. They're absolutely at the center of the story at the theater production. The production would not exist without the story. and yet at the same time they are peripheral. So they are on the outside of the theater production. And it's very interesting because though that particular role that the playwright plays is exactly the duplicity that we see with theater mirroring man's humanity. So the playwright plays the two roles in the same way that we're watching the actor. We know it's an actor playing a character. The doubling of theater happens throughout the entire production. So the script will always belong to the playwright. Those are the playwright's words. That is their idea. That is they've created that conflict and the tension and the resolution. And then once the script is completed and handed over to the director, then the playwright's role can become peripheral. The playwright's on the outside of the director looking at the script saying, what did you intend here? Sometimes if you're working with an original script, which is my favorite, you're working with a playwright that is actually trying the script on for the first time. So then the playwright is more involved because the director can bounce off the playwright and say, is this what you actually intended here? What do you think about this? I'm thinking about going this direction. If the playwright is no longer with us, as in Shakespeare, the director can devise any number of ways to deal with those words. But what we want the playwright to give us is new vision and fresh perspective to the world around us, so that they take a look through their specific lens and say, this is how I'm seeing the world right now, in this particular moment in time, in this location, and this is a reflection of what I am seeing. The play and the audience. So performance doesn't exist without an audience. The playwright can create tension between empathy. You really want to be in there with the actor, you want to be in there with the character, and aesthetic distance. You're going to be holding yourself back from that. You're going to not allow yourself to be part of the action. You know, it doesn't have to take, you don't have to take part of it. You can see it from a distance. You can watch it unfold. It can touch you emotionally, but you don't have to have that thing happen to you because you are slightly outside as an audience member. One thing the playwright wants to do is invite the purging of strong emotions through catharsis. So you get to have this vicarious emotional journey with the actor, telling the story, takes you through the great highs, the absolute uproarious laughter and funniness of the moment, and or the deep depths of tragedy. And you get to have that experience vicariously. It doesn't harm you. And yet when you come out, you've had an emotional release because you've experienced it through the story of the character. In the late 20th century, so we're talking late 1900s, the playwrights invited intellectual rather than the emotional response from the audience. So that's just an intent or a format of how playwrights looked at the audience. Previously, it was more for an emotional response, and then they started trying to really engage the intellect, and we had a lot more political plays. And then we started in our 21st century to just have a different kind of combination of both intellect and emotional involvement. How does a playwright find success in the industry? They have two essential connections for success. We talked about these briefly last time: the agent, and the producer. The agent who safeguards the playwright, sees their promise, looks at the material that they work with, gives them suggestions for material, will read the play, will help provide editing notes, will possibly help them find a inspirational partner or a muse, and the producer, separately from the agent, who latches on to this play, this story, because it is incredibly compelling and they feel like they've discovered something for the very first time. It's brand new. It's so exciting. The world that the playwright is seeing is so fresh, so transparent. We can see through it, we can feel it, but we can also touch it. And the producer is willing to go out on a limb and then try and raise money so that they could do all the process of the workshop through the final production. The playwright is possibly the most respected of the theater artists because the production doesn't exist without the script. And when we ever get stuck, always go back to the script. What does the script say? What is that character saying? How do I understand that character? What do they say about themselves? What do others say about them? So that you look both inside and outside of everything. So they are very much respected of all the theater artists. And after the production closes, you know, it's a very visceral experience, but it's also temporary. It goes away. Every time you see a play, even if you see the same play day after day, or you come back and you see it, a lot of people like to go opening night and then see it on closing night at Santa Barbara City College or Santa Barbara Theater Group, because we do around 14 performances. So over 3 weeks, you'll see an opening night and then see how it's changed or how it has settled in or how it has moved, smoothed around the edges by the time they come to the closing night. But the performance will be different. It will be different than every single night because there's so many variables. But at the end, and the performance is no more, and we've put that away, we've struck all the furniture, we've put away the costumes, and the actors are now back on to their home or doing to their next production, the playwright's words still remain. So the script, the thing that we started with, the thing that we end with, it's really the only thing that can be published is what remains. So that's why they are truly the center of it, because they start and finish it. And yet through the production process, they are really more on the outside. They don't really weigh in on the lighting or the costume or the set or what the director's doing with their words. And primarily they don't weigh in on that because generally they're not around. So the new American writing is takes on topics such as gender, ethnicity, and sexual orientation become more important than love and romance or a great tragedy. We have some great gay and lesbian writing, LGBTQ. Early on, I mean, in the 60s, starting with The Boys in the Band, Henry David Wing with M. Butterfly, which is a story, again, based on true events of a diplomat that falls in love with who he thinks who is a woman, but who is actually a man, and then ends up becoming a spy. It's a fascinating, true story that became a play and then an opera. Tony Kushner's Angel in America, How I Learned to Drive with Paula Vogel, another Tony Award. Moises Kaufman's The Laramie Project, which is this Matthew Shepard story from Laramie, Wyoming. A story of a young gay man who's beaten up and left on a fence to die. And let's take a look at a couple of those. We'll just review these and then we'll take a look at the trailers that I've put for you. African American writing, again, I'll bring in those new playwrights from actually just last Sunday's LA Times, which just was amazing with the new plays that are coming out. But the very first one, 1920, a Black book musical. Now, when we talk about a musical and we talk about the book, we're talking about the words that take place and push the story forward. The lyrics are the words to the song, and then the composition is the music portion. So the book is the story, the lyrics are the words to the song, and then the composition is the music portion. So Shuffle Along by Noble Sisal and U.B. Blake was from 1920. Langston Hughes wrote all through the 20th century. Mulatto was the early one in 1930s, to Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun in the late 1950s, which was a very famous play and became a famous movie, and then was revisited with, I think that's the one that maybe Kanye West was in. I mean, it was amazing. I'm trying to remember. And August Wilson, an incredibly important playwright, born in 1945 and died in 2005. He had 7 plays produced: Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which was a musical, To Gem of the Ocean, and Fences, which is, we'll see a short cut of that, but also became a movie just recently with Denzel Washington. Susan Laurie Parks did Top Dog. Underdog was one of her first big plays. She's done an incredible number of plays. That won the Pulitzer Prize. The Pulitzer is the highest literary prize for a play. And Susie Laurie Parks had the idea of she's going to write 360, one play every day for a full year. And she had a group of different people working with her, and it was an amazing thing that happened in Los Angeles. Asian American writing is, I mentioned David Henry Hwang, M. Butterfly. He actually started with a group called East West Players in Los Angeles, and they're still one of the very most prominent equity theater companies in Los Angeles, and they workshopped this play, and then it became very popular from there on. But he introduced the Asian voice into mainstream the US, because before that, there really was not an Asian voice in Western theater that we think of as the United States. Philip Kan Gotanda wrote Sisters Matsumoto and Hong On, LA Stories, Diana Song, Stop Kiss. We'll see a little slice of Stop Kiss also. Latin writers in Spanish language, we have the Mexican writer Luis Alfaro, who El Teatro Campesino, which is the farm workers theater in the San Joaquin Valley, started because they were really trying to protect farm workers in the 50s and 60s from unfair practices from farmers, trying to allow them to have food, allow them to have good housing, allow them to have health care. And that's when we had major movements, and not as big as Black Lives Matter movement now, but major movements where they had the boycott grapes and lettuce movement. So people stopped buying those so that the farmers would not achieve wealth on the backs of undocumented workers that were living, many people to one room, a shack really out on the agricultural area without care. The Chicana Josefina Lopez, The Real Women Have Curves, a very fun play. Cuban writer Nilo Cruz of Anna in the Tropics, also a Pulitzer Prize winning, and of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda. Let's look at, I think I can do this. Right, maybe I can't. Maybe I have to go to, okay, wait a second. Let's just stop share and we'll go to questions so far. Wait, no, what movie? Did you unmute the quiz grade? So we need to know if you take the second attempts. That's where I am. You want to know about the quiz, William? Okay. I went through all the quizzes. Thanks for that question. And they are identically placed in the format, so that they should have been the same as the first. This quiz should have been the same as the first quiz, and also the third and fourth quiz. All of the way that it has been formatted has been exactly the same. And I will, I can find out, and I will send you an email, because I did send people's information that emailed me separately, and so I will do that for you. And I apologize that I was not able to get that solved yesterday. So, and I can go to the Faculty Resource Center has open sessions, and so I will absolutely get that taken care of today. I don't know why it's not working, but there were a few other things that weren't working that I was able to solve, and sometimes it's just an error in a link. So then I have to get help from the techno people. So let's take a look at some of these other. Go back here. We'll take a look at some of these trailers. Okay. I don't know if I can switch between these two, but we'll see if I can go between them, or if I have to come back here each time. And that's probably just something that I need to go to a better Zoom class and figure out. So these are going to be a mix of a play, and then a play that's been made into a movie, and then a trailer for that. So, you know, we do trailers for each one of the plays that we do in the Garvin stage. And some theaters do trailers for their companies, and then sometimes we work with just the video. So I want to, you'll be able to go look at these.
Look up. Look up.
Are you one of those follow me to the other side voices?
No, I am no night bird. I am a messenger.
What?
So this is Angels in America.
Chaos, baby. Reason number one.
AIDS is what homosexuals have. I have liver cancer. You can call it any damn thing you want, Roy. But what it boils down to, you have AIDS. Why are you dressed like that?
You don't like it?
Nurses are supposed to wear white.
Doctors are supposed to be at home in Westchester asleep.
Sorry, sick friend.
Yourself, what it was you were running from. It's about time you did. And what are you running from now?
You should never have married me. You have all these secrets and lies.
It's the hardest thing. Maybe that's when love and justice finally meet.
The shit's really hit the fan, huh, Roy? The fun's just started.
I'm not safe here, you see. Weird stuff happens. In this world, there's a kind of painful progress. Longing for what we've left behind and dreaming ahead.
Okay, so that particular play, they actually did fly someone that wore angel wings. And I know that you can see that the movie is very theatrical, but that all of that did actually take place on a stage. And the movie came from that. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, it's really quite worth it. That is Tony Kushner's Angel in America. Top Dog Underdog is Susan Laurie's Parks, Pulitzer Prize winning play that we'll take a look at next.
Let's see what you got.
My new name's 3-Card. 3-Card. Got it? You wanted to know it. Now you know it. 3-Card. Shh. Yeah. I'm getting everybody to call me 3-Card. Anybody not calling me 3 card gets a bullet.
You too much, man.
I'm making a point.
Point made, 3 card. Point made.
We clean up, bro. You throw the cards, and I'd be your stick man. The one in the crowd who looks like just an innocent passerby. You do your moves, I do mine. You turn the heads, I turn the cards.
Lean in close and watch me now. Who see the black card? Who see the black card? I see the black card. Black card's a winner. Who see the black card? Who see the black card? You pick a red card, you got a loser. You pick the other red card, you got another loser. The black card, the deuce of spades, you pick the winner. Who see the deuce of spades? The one who sees it never fades. Watch me as I throw the cards.
No one throws cards like you, Link. And with your skills and my magic, and we get Grace and a girl for you to round out the posse, we'll be golden, bro. Am I right? Am I right?
Okay, man, you know which card's the deuce of spades? Was you watching Link's lightning fast express? Was you watching Link because he the best? Then lay your bet, and Link will turn over your winner. $500. You the man of the hour. You the man with the power. Now you cash in my hand, cause like the man. Thank you, mister. This card you say? Go on. Ha! That's the show. We gotta go.
Am I right?
Don't touch your cards, 3 card. Don't touch your cards no more.
One thing you want to think about there is think about the language that's used in that. Oh shoot, I gotta go back. Just a second, you guys.
This is Roy Parks.
Okay, thank you. But that's a really good example. The 2 pieces that we just saw, if you look at plot, you look at character, and you look at language. In the second piece, there are 2 characters. Their language is very much the street vernacular of where those 2 individuals live. You can see that they're trying to pull a game. They're trying to do a trick. They're trying to get money by doing these card sleight of hand. Whereas the first one is more of a magical. We have angels coming in, we have snow angels, we have repetition of imagery, and that was trying to make sense of the AIDS crisis that we had. People couldn't even talk about AIDS. They wouldn't, it was a death sentence for, started in 1984 until midway through the 2000s, where we were, it literally was that when you got AIDS, you were going to die. And that was a way to try and cope with the incredible pain of trying to live in that world with people. And it's much like COVID-19, except that it was, well, I don't know if it's more of a death penalty or not, but, trying to identify how can it be cured? Is there a cure? Is there any way to cure or heal a broken immune system? So the language is very much of each individual person in that instead of a collective. So you have the doctor in a sort of an elevated language talking to the nurse is kind of talking back to the doctor. The not just the 2 lovers, but the 2 mixed up people that are trying to live their lives and trying to figure out who they are while they're living their lives. So again, if you look at those 3 things, the plot, the character, and the language, you really see the playwright's hand in that. We're going to take a look at a couple more from our playwrights. And this will be from August Wilson's Fences.
When I first met this woman, I saw Rose and I latched on to her. I told her, baby, I don't want to marry. I just want to be your man. Rose told me.
I told him if he wasn't a mankind, and move out the way so the mankind could find me.
That's what she told me. You're in my way. You're blocking the view. Move out the way so I can find me a husband. Wait, Corey. I want him to help me with this fence.
He got recruited by a college football team.
It ain't gonna get him nowhere.
If he be like you in the sports, he gonna be all right. Ain't but two men ever played baseball good as you.
And what it ever get me? I ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of.
Hey, Pop, can I ask you a question? How come you ain't never liked me?
What law is there say I got to like you? A man is supposed to take care of his family. You live in my house, fill your belly with my food, put your behind on my bed because you're my son. Now don't you go through life worrying about whether somebody like you or not. You best be making sure they're doing right by you.
Corey just trying to fill out your shoes.
I don't want him to be like me. I want him to get as far away from my life as he possibly can get. You the only decent thing ever happened to me, Rose.
You can't be nobody but who you are, Troy. That's all you got to measure yourself against the world out there.
Rose, I got something to tell you. I don't know how to tell you this.
Why, Troy? Why?
You ought to know it's time.
I don't want to know, damn it!
What you ever given me? Your feet, them bones, that pumping heart.
You never done nothing but hold me back, afraid I was gonna be better than you.
Everything that boy do, he do for you.
It's not easy for me to admit that I've been standing in the same place for 18 years.
Well, I've been standing with you. I got a life too. Don't you think I had dreams and hopes? What about my life? What about me?
What are you gonna do? Some people build fences to keep people out, and other people build fences to keep people in.
So there's a play version of this that we might look at as our live performance response that we are going to do. And we'll take a look at Butterfly so that you can, this was again a movie, it's a very big, was a huge sensation. It was an amazing piece. And again, this is the one I told you is based off of a true story of a diplomat. In this, Jeremy Irons plays the diplomat. Oh, sorry.
After a century of foreign influence, Asia was about to reclaim herself.
The Red Guard has emerged as a genuinely potent reactionary political force which will seize upon any excuse to justify the expulsion of all foreigners from China.
Onto this immense stage came a diplomat with a romantic vision.
I, René Gallimard, have known and been loved by the perfect woman.
And a performer who brought his fantasy to life. Theirs was a world that can never be revisited. From director David Cronenberg comes an epic story of love and its power to deceive. Academy Award winner Jeremy Irons, The Last Emperor's John Lone. Nothing blinds a man to reality like perfect love. The prosecution claims Mr. Gallimard was fully aware of the implications of his espionage activities.
Oh. Inspired by the true story and based on the Tony Award-winning play, M. Butterfly.
Okay, that takes us to the top of the hour, and we'll take a 10-minute break. William, I'll check on that, and I'll send you a chat separately, and then we'll come back. See you at 10:10.
See you.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared, actually. I should not do that. We'll look at this first. So we'll take a quick look at our dramatic forms. Oops. No, we won't. Sorry about that. Thank you for allowing the break. And now we'll look at dramatic forms. Oh, I can't move you to the top. Hold on. Guess I have to get that in the center first. Well, I'm just having, oh no, it's right here, but I can't seem to move that up. Let me get this all the way up here. Sorry about this stumbling around, you guys. Not used to doing everything at home. All right, back to the beginning. Sorry about that. Okay, dramatic forms. So this is when we actually talk about genre. Dramatic forms fall into several categories, sometimes called genre. When we work with our headlines to the page, you will be creating your compelling headline and you'll be putting it into one of these genres. There are 7 primary genres that we discuss: tragedy, comedy, melodrama, farce, epic, and absurd. So we'll break it down. This is the playwright's way of imitating human behavior using dramatic forms. Dramatic forms change as society's perception of the world changes. And that's because, playwrights are human beings and they go along and live in the same world that we do. They live in the world that's contemporary with their time period. Sometimes they're visionary and they can look forward and they write something that will happen in the future. And sometimes they're reflective and they're looking back at history, but they're always looking through the eyes of someone that's existing in their time period. It's very difficult to get out of your specific time period. So we need to be cautious when we're looking back that we're not putting our sensibilities of right now, 21st century, on something that we might be looking at in the 20s. So you see what I mean? The playwright's choice of form gives both the reader and the audience a context in which to place the play, how the play should be viewed by society. So if the playwright is putting something in a tragic form as a tragedy, that's going to give you, the reader and also the audience, a way to put a framework around that play so that you know what you're going to see. It gets a little more convoluted when we're into the absurd and the epic, but we will go forward. So the content and the endings, beginning and endings, and the stuff in between, which is the content, provides clues about the play and asks questions. Is the play about relationships? A man to woman, parent to child, friends and lovers. What is the play about? And when we're talking about theme, We're answering the question and making the statement, this play is about, and the blank that you fill in is a universal truth. Is it exploring gender and sexual orientation? Is it exploring something else? Is it exploring some sort of fluidity? Is it really trying to expose just a slice of life? This is just how man appears at this moment in time. Is it hopeful for mutual understanding or to hold getting along up to ridicule? So if you're just getting along, is that something we want to poke fun at? Is that something that is not a satisfying thing? Is that something that you're compromising, that you're just trying to get along? Or is it that we really want to go for mutual understanding? Is the play looking at life and humanity's unchanging existential situation? So what is this play about? Tragedy is the first recognized dramatic form. This is the very first genre that existed back to the Greeks. That's why we read Oedipus. It looks at human fallibility. It was identified, tragedy was identified by Aristotle, and we'll get to him in the next slide or two. So the first recognized dramatic form looks at humans. Humans are fail, humans are not perfect, but we are all human. The tragic vision is people are both vulnerable and invincible. They try to give meaning to the paradox of humanity. It's like how we both exist and we fail. We succeed and we fail. It reflects both the order and the irrational worlds. We can't make sense of some things that happen. We try to keep trying to put things in order. Tragic heroes have free will and pit themselves against overwhelming forces. We, the reader, the player, and the audience shares in their triumphs. We share in their triumph and in the face of defeat. So this idea of free will is in the early Greek plays, there are the gods, but the gods have given man free will. They will possibly obey and act accordingly to the tradition, or they will instead do something that's outside of that. And then in that case, they will have to fail. That is the definition of failing. The tragic realization, which is a recognition or an agnosis, is the world order exists and must not be violated. Human acts are futile, and in a different universe, the action hero can be celebrated. So the hero is doing the best they can, but the world order exists. However, you have free will. So the hero is going to try and do something. They pit themselves against the gods, essentially. So we celebrate that. We want the man to be strong and succeed, and yet the human act is futile. Aristotle is our very first writer of criticism on plays. He wrote the treatise on tragedy, which is called the Poetics. It was the first to actually document the elements and structure of tragedy, and really truly of all plays, which is thought, which is the intent, or this is what the play is about. What is the theme? So the characters, who is enacting the theme, who embodies the theme, the plot, what are the characters doing to further the theme, the diction, which is the language, how they speak, song, which is the music behind it, and spectacle, which would be all of the visual elements. So thought, character, plot, diction, song, and spectacle. So in the Poetics, Aristotle is emphasizing plot. He feels like plot is more important over actual character. Who does what to whom is more important than character. In our current life, we feel that character is more important than plot. We have elevated man to that point. The very averageness of modern tragic heroes underlines our common humanity. They're very average. We can see ourselves in them. And Oedipus is an almost perfect example of tragedy. Comedy. Comedy is social. Tragedy is basically one. We're looking at one man and one human, one hero. But in comedy, we're looking at society. It examines the social world, social values, and people as social beings. Comic action is developed by an eccentric character creating a social disorder. Could be an eccentric character creating social disorder. And that we can think about that when we go think about certain comedy TV shows that you see. It can be surrounding one particular character and their response to the whole world that they live in and the values that they live in. Comedy deals with the social unit or with society or with the humanity as a whole. Tragedy deals with the individual from that point of view. The comic vision ridicules antisocial and eccentric behavior. Everyone wants to be into the party, calls for sanity and reason. The life force is celebrated through a wedding, a dance, or a banquet, and generally this is at the end of the play. We have some great celebration of, we've all survived, here's our life force. Humanity endures and good sense will win the day. So that's a great feeling for the end of a comedy. We feel great. This idea of how do we learn through a play, what kind of point we're making, and we can make the point just as easily through comedy, and sometimes we learn more easily through comedy than we do through tragedy, because we can learn while we're laughing and seeing ourselves in that character as well as seeing ourselves in the tragic character. But sometimes you can see more easily in comedy. And here's an interesting thing, tragic comedy, or as you see, tragic, tragedy, and comedy together. I like to look at the word tragic comedy. It's a mixed dramatic form. Until the 19th century, the ending was a principal feature because it started out as a serious play with a happy ending. So the modern tragicomedy designates that plays are neither tragic nor comic, but underlies the value of surviving in the face of social and economic change. Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett could be an example of that. And with Godot, it's really primarily two characters. We see them in an empty stage with a tree, and they are waiting. And it has one leaf. When we come to the second act, the leaf has fallen. They're still waiting. They're waiting for Godot. We hear Bozo and another come in, but it doesn't matter. This play was very ill received by the whole world until it played San Quentin, and in San Quentin, they completely understood the value and the necessity of waiting without a goal, without anything else possibly happening. Some hope, but still waiting. But it is still moving. It's not stagnant. It's that breathing moment of waiting. And then Angels in America, the clip that we saw, is actually considered a darkly comic resolution, putting forth ideas of social change to be able to look at this disease and try to recognize it for what it is, that we can embrace it, that this is something that we need to work towards, that there should be not, it was with the AIDS, with the AIDS illness, it became as though they were lepers. They could not be in society. People didn't want to touch them. It was when Magic Johnson came out, I think it was in 1992, that he had AIDS, and they, other basketball players, he had to immediately retire from basketball. They didn't want to be on the same court with him. He couldn't play in the Olympics. They didn't want to even be seen around him, as if they could catch it by somehow breathing the same air. And bizarrely, we're in a situation now with COVID-19 where you actually can catch it by breathing the same air. But, this is, how can we look at this illness? And in fact, I think probably this is some things that we're going to be taking a look at plays that come in the future, and also movies they're going to be talking about. What are we doing with the coronavirus? Melodrama. And again, the same thing, a mixed word, two forms, melody and drama. Think of those two words together to create melodrama. Very popular at the end of the 19th century. Drama was spoken word against a musical background. And often this would be a piano playing, and then you would hear the piano racing to catch up with the action. The characters are clearly defined and divided, much like the Commedia dell'arte. They have stock characters in melodrama, so they're sympathetic or unsympathetic. There's the hero, there's the villain, there's Dudley Do-Right, and and often the same actor would play both sides of the character, like the evil twin and the good twin. Usually achieves a happy resolution through the destruction of the villainous character with extensive use of music and the elements of spectacle to heighten action, mood, and emotion. So I'll have to take a look at many of those typos, and I'll fix that before I post it. And let's go back, and we will take a brief look at those last few trailers that we have, and then we'll call it a day. And I'd like to encourage people to work on the homework so that you don't get too bogged down, and it can be very difficult to catch up. So I want to just encourage you, because we have to work at such a fast pace because we're in the summer school class. So I don't want us to get too far behind. Okay, we are going to look at Stop Kiss, which is an example of an Asian American playwright. And let's see if we can, there we go, popular play.
Break. Or why do you keep saying that? You. These cards are driving me nuts. One more hand, please. Can I ask you something? Yeah. About your job? You mean this fellowship? I mean, public school, the Bronx, teaching. Instead of private school, St. Louis teaching? That's what you're used to, right? I never got used to it. It's where I worked for 5 years. I mean, I never went to private school. We all went to the cruddy public school. It was cruddy compared to the private school. It's Sorbonne compared to where I teach now, but I mean, in a private school? What am I giving them? They have more than everything. Can I ask you a question about your job? Go ahead. Why the traffic? Why the traffic indeed? As opposed to news reporting or other kinds of journalism. I'm not a journalist. I never worked in radio or TV before I got this job. But how'd you get it? My boyfriend, Tom's uncle, worked at the station. Oh. It's the traffic. It's not even the weather. Just ride around in a helicopter and tell people what the cars are doing. Well, the helicopter part's pretty great, right? Yeah, how great. But if you don't like it, you could get another job. I can't.
Could you do me a favor for just like a minute? Sure. Would you just lie here in bed for just a minute just to see if he comes? Okay. Since he's been sleeping with you.
Yeah. I guess we should convince him we're sleeping.
Oh, right. Are your feet hot?
What?
My feet get hot when I sleep.
Even in winter?
Yeah.
Take him out.
Well, I usually move the sheet so that it goes the other, with the short. You see him?
Who?
Caesar.
Not yet. You can't be asleep already, are you?
Okay, that's an interesting piece about an unexpected relationship between two people that just happens. And so that, again, is a different thing. We're watching a filmed play. And this is the thing that we'll be doing our play performance critique on, will be a filmed play. And this is Milo Cruz, Anna and the Topics.
I just arrived from the island.
What are you planning on reading?
Also a filmed play.
First, Tolstoy, Anna Karenina.
Anna Karenina. I like the title already. Is it romantic?
Yes, quite romantic.
Ah, yes. We can't forget our lector, who brought us the world of Anna Karenina.
So that's the kind of trailer that we do at Santa Barbara Theater Group for our patrons, and then it plays on local TV. This is happening right now. This just was released on Disney Plus. It's the film version of Hamilton, the movie trailer. So let's take a look. So what would you guys like to do? We can look at a couple of more of those clips, and we can go on to talking about dramatic conventions of tragedy, comedy, tragicomedy, melodrama. And we can look at the Oedipus assignment. Have you taken a look at that? Let's take a look at the Oedipus assignment.